Reading 125 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll, Volume 3. Great Amwell House, June 12, 1948. Self-transformation. Work idea. This work teaches that man is born incomplete, unfinished. But he is born as a self-developing organism. That is, he can complete himself. The work is about how a man can complete himself. Man can transform himself and so complete himself. Commentary. What is this work about? As children, we play with toys, say baby dolls and lead soldiers. Then, as we grow up, we are given a new set of toys. We play with having real babies, being real soldiers, and with many other things offered us to play with, such as money, position, business, politics, and in the case of scientists, with the transformation of elements or molecules, making synthetic foods or atom bombs, machines, and so on. We play at being patriots, leaders, virtuous, self-sacrificing people. We play at being husbands and wives. We play noble parts. We play at being religious. We play with all the adult toys given us in order to keep us fast asleep. Yes, a clever idea lies here. Is it not true from this aspect that all the world's a stage? Now, the scientists occupied themselves with transformation, the transformation of one element into another in atomic chemistry, or the transformation of one substance into another in molecular chemistry. The medieval alchemist spoke much about the transformation of the element lead into the element gold. I believe that this is possible in atomic chemistry today. But of course, what the real alchemists meant was the transformation of mechanical man, symbolized by lead, into conscious man, symbolized by gold. Now, having played with our first set of toys, and then with our second set of toys, a man, a woman, coming as it were to the end of meaning, may wish for something that is not playing with childish or adult toys. But let me add, unless you have been through playing with some adult toys and learning the game, you cannot proceed further. We have all to go through the stage of adult toys, that is, having real babies, or being real soldiers, etc., or taking up a career, and in short, doing your job in life. This stage corresponds to what the work calls level of good householder. And you will remember that this work is not for those who have done nothing. It is not for tramps or lunatics. It is for those who have been responsible, who have done some job or other in life, and who have gained some wisdom from contact with life. That is, who realize that in life you cannot have your own way, and that life is a second force, or force of resistance, to what, in your fantasy, you wish to attain to, without any effort. Gurdjieff said, "If a man knows how to make coffee, to such a man I can speak." Many remarks of Gurdjieff's, like this one, sound trivial, but knowing how he spoke, I realized that what he meant was a man who could plant coffee, grow it, look after it, and finally make coffee in a cup for you. That is, he meant a man who thoroughly knew his job. To such a man, Gurdjieff said, I can speak. Yes, but why did he say this? Because such a man has been up against the second force of life, the difficulties of labor, the diseases of the coffee berry, the gathering of the berries, the storing of them, the transport of them, the marketing of them, the export of them, and all the 101 things that belong to such a business. In saying with apparent simplicity that he could speak to a man who could make coffee, Gurdjieff meant something far deeper than at first sight. He did not mean a man who buys tinned coffee and makes a cup for himself. He meant a man who knows all about coffee from beginning to end. Now, such a man in the work is called a good householder. It means a man, a woman, who has made something, become something in life by hard work, by effort, and so a person who has combated with life as a force of resistance and won something, whether it be one thing or the other, say a profession, a job, a valid position of some sort, or a family with its responsibilities, and so on. Unless we do this, we are ghosts, or rather tramps. We are not real. Now the work says unless the level of good householder is attained, the work cannot act on us aright. We have no life wisdom. We expect miracles where none can happen. We have nothing laid down in centers of any value to us, nor do we know what effort means in its most ordinary sense. Everything disappoints us, but it does not occur to us that we have to make an effort so that everything does not disappoint us. Remember, we are all on this planet under 48 orders of laws. That is, all people, high or low, are under the same laws. I will pass now from the idea of good householder to the further definition used in the work concerning the good householder, who no longer believes in life. This refers to a man, a woman, who have been through all that they have, as it were, taken on their shoulders. For remember, in organic life, every living thing has to make effort, and have begun to think something like this: is there anything beyond this life? Is there anything I can find beyond what, as good householder, I feel it my duty to follow? We spoke just now of scientists transforming the atom and so on, but what can that lead to? I can well imagine a scientist saying, I am sick of making atom bombs, or a financier saying, I am sick of money, or a politician saying, I am sick of politics, or a soldier saying, I am sick of being a soldier. Yes, one can begin to come to the end of life meanings. Then what? What else is there? Now this work is not about transforming outer life, or about transforming the atom, or one's financial or political or social position. It is about transforming oneself. It is about completing this incomplete thing called oneself. This thing born as a self-developing organism. Understand that this is only fully possible when one has played with the second set of toys seriously and properly. You will get nowhere in the work, which is not about playing with toys, unless you have gained the level spoken of, that of a reasonably good life man or good householder. Why? Because your centers will not have laid down in them enough roles, enough experience, and you will not know how to make ordinary effort. You will have no life wisdom. In short, you will still be perhaps playing with the first set of toys, dolls, lead soldiers, and so on, without knowing it. You will no doubt fantasy many lovely things, Queen of the May, etc. But when it comes to doing something, you will not be there, or will feel ill, or actually get ill. Understand, life is the same for all of us. We are all under the same laws. It is equally difficult for all of us. A man, if he has plus, has also an equivalent minus. If you do not understand this, you will waste so much force in saying, if only. Think no one better placed than you, for everyone is placed just where they should be placed for their own development. Now, as was said, the work is about self-transformation and is based on the definite idea that man, created experimentally as a self-developing organism, has a definite way or path to follow in order to reach this further state of himself, once he has dealt enough with life and reached thereby a certain level of being, which is first necessary. Let us take in this connection the work idea that a man, a woman, must work on being identified, and try to see how, by observing and working upon the state of being identified, one can begin to transform oneself. Take a man who is totally identified with his career. Everything he does is a source of worry to him. He is eaten on every side through identifying. To identify, in a literal sense, means to make oneself the same as. That is, to make yourself identical with something. Take a man who makes himself identical with his bank account. He loses his money and commits suicide, a common thing. Why does he do this? He does it because his money and his feeling of himself are identical. So when he loses his money, He feels he no longer exists. He feels he is annihilated. He is identified with something not really him at all. Now, as regards this man identified with his career, he wants, say, to become prime minister. He pulls wires, he intrigues, he sees all sorts of people whom otherwise he would not. He runs to and fro. He is in a continual state of anxiety, always keyed up, sleepless, and so on. This is quite all right for life, for the adult toys. But if all this leads him nowhere else in the long run, he retires and no doubt wonders what on earth it was all about. Consider how a star, a famous person, by the turn of the wheel of time, becomes suddenly nobody. Remember, life is a mill race, a torrent, which we have to be in for a time, but which we have gradually to swim out of. Yes, we have to be in this mill race, to be men and women. The point is to get out of it later on. If you never plunged in, you are no good. You thought, no doubt, to save your soul, but one must lose one's soul to find it again. Now these pictures of people totally identified are not to be sneered at for a moment. Each one of us pours force into the state of being identified over the most trivial things. Where is the center of gravity of being identified? Every emotional part of a center can identify, but the emotional center itself is the center of gravity of being identified. Mr. Ouspensky said once that the object of the work is to awaken the emotional center. He said in so many words that we have no real emotions. We only know the emotion of being identified. This, he said, prevents the emotional center from doing its proper work. He said the emotional center, if it were purified from negative emotions and identifying, would give us, for example, clairvoyance, the power of a cognitive knowledge quite different from the knowledge of the intellectual center, such as a sense of danger, a sense of the future, and many things which belong to us by creation, but which we have lost, having been brought up amongst sleeping people, and being infected by negative emotions and states of identifying. Now, if we work against identifying, if we observe it in ourselves, for remember, you can change nothing in yourself if you have not yet observed it, become conscious of it, then by the mere fact of being aware of it, which is equivalent to confession of it, you will begin very gradually to dislike the emotional state of being identified. So here briefly is an example of how this work can begin to transform you. I will add one thing. All connection is through meaning. Unless a thing means something to you, you cannot connect with it. If you cannot see any meaning in this work for yourself, you will not be able to connect with it. This work teaches that greater mind exists, and that unless a person can realize this, he will not be able to work on himself. Unless you realize the miracle of nature and the miracle of your own created existence, you cannot work. You will never, for instance, be able to separate yourself from the state of being continually identified with yourself, because you imagine you are the biggest person, and that there can be nothing bigger than you. And here, I would like to draw your attention to the ray of creation and ask you to reflect upon where you come in on it. One must begin to realize that one is not exactly what one imagines.